Today, Mentoring Writers welcomes a children's picture book author who has created a lovely selection of enticing and interesting books for younger readers. One of those books in particular has become a must for use in primary school education. Here to talk about her books, I am delighted to welcome Welsh writer Claire Donald. Welcome, Claire. It's great to have you here in conversation with me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here.
That's a lovely Welsh accent. I do love the Welsh accent. We met through my review and editing services when you sent me what I believe was your first picture storybook. You'll tell me if that's wrong. And it's called Mother Earth is Weeping. Now, I found the story totally delightful. Can you tell our readers more about this book and what or who encouraged you to write it?
Okay, so this is Mother Earth. And I thought I was made redundant from my teaching job. And while I had been teaching, during an inspection, the lead inspector looked at some of the work that I had around the classroom. I'd written stories and poems and concerts and what have you. And he was rather taken with them and said that I should get them published. Well, I didn't really act on that because I was so busy teaching, you know. And all the writing I had done up till then had been for the school and for my children and my classroom. But when I left teaching, it was lovely for the first few years, you know, you're just pottering around and off here, there and everywhere. And then I thought, oh, I don't know, I need to do something. So I had been watching a programme with Greta Thunberg in it. And I was absolutely amazed by this young lady. And it must have germinated some seed in my head. And I just came up with Mother Earth is Weeping. The funny thing is that I don't actually have to think very much about books. They sort of write themselves. They just pop into my head somehow, mainly when I'm trying to get to sleep. But it just pops in, you know. So, and I thought it was a lovely thing to write about the troubles that Mother Earth is experiencing at the moment. And it was also a way to educate the children. So I was still in touch with youngsters. And now I go into schools and we do poetry workshops, my husband and I. And we have a wonderful time with the children. And I have all the joy of being with these amazing kids and none of the problems of planning and assessment, and, you know.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So it's brilliant.
I'm like you. I actually do, I'm the same. I go to bed and I'm living the stories in my head. And that's how I wrote my series, The Little Friends Adventures. I wrote them in bed and then put them down on paper. So as I mentioned earlier, Mother Earth is Weeping it became quite popular.
Yes, it has, yeah.
In schools. Now, obviously, this comes from you being the former career as a primary school teacher. Can you tell our readers something about your past experiences of working with special needs children and how this may have helped you when writing your story?
Well, not especially for Mother Earth, but all my books really. If I can adapt the vocabulary in it so that it's elaborated code vocabulary, then and it goes with the story that I'm reading, then I will do it, because it is so important that our children have all the tools that they can get for when they're adults and need to go into the work environment. And a lot of our children, the children with special needs and learning difficulties that I taught, they would have found it very difficult to get into the work environment without that extra support. So I've got a thing about vocabulary and enriching children's vocabulary. But also my books now, there are children that come into our schools and they have very little experience of life outside of their home. And when they come into school, we provide them with a home corner, which we turn into a cafe. They've never been to a cafe, which we turn into an airport. They've never been to an airport. So my books now, I'm looking at it from a compensatory sort of point of view, so that they are getting some ideas. Although they haven't visited themselves, they've got some idea of what's going on in these different scenarios, and then they can apply them to the role play in school, and talking about things. You know, we ask them questions, and sometimes they've just got no answers because they've got no experience. So my books now, I'm hoping, will add to that compensatory education for them.
Which brings me on to my next question, of course. Since you've wrote Mother Earth is Weeping, you've gone on to write a further, I think it's 7 books. There's probably some more in the pipeline, all being with full colour illustrations. And can you introduce your illustrators, Simon and Krish?
Krish, yeah.
And tell us why you chose those 2 in particular when it comes to when it comes to them as illustrators for your books.
Well, that's a story. I asked several friends who are particularly good with art and craft if they would like to try and illustrate my books, and they're fabulous artists, but they couldn't get the continuity. They just like the on the one page you'd have a girl with long ginger hair, and then on the next page her hair would be a different colour, or a ear would be in the wrong place. So there was no continuity, even though the pictures as individual pictures were absolutely beautiful. And then my cousin's husband, Simon, he's a watercolour artist, and I asked him if he'd like to try, and he was absolutely brilliant. I just fell in love with all his work, you know, the detail in it, and he's very clever. So he did Mother Earth, and he's gone on to do another Soggysaurus for me. At the minute, he's illustrating The Fantastical Tale of Gareth Bale. Now, I'm hoping that'll be ready soon. My other author, Krish Vindy, I found her actually on a web page, and I liked what she did, so I got in contact with her. I saw what she did for other people, and I thought, well, that'll suit some of my stories. So I got in contact with her, and she actually lived in Sri Lanka. So we were talking via Facebook and message and what have you. Anyway, she agreed to do my illustrations, and later I found out that she was moving somewhere else, and she's actually moved to Pontypridd, which is half an hour away from me.
Brilliant.
But she is an architect, and so is her husband, and he's a lecturer in Pontypridd College. So they're over here. So funny.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Now, I know you have 2 delightful and sometimes boisterous young graduates, because I see the posts about them, and I love the comments where you have conversations with them, and the conversations are brilliant. But I think children do come up with some wonderful conversations sometimes. So, do they play a part in the stories that you create?
They do. In our house, I try and get away from using plastic toys, and I want them to use their imaginations. So we've created a game, and it's called Paper World, and they draw all the characters that they want to play with, and they draw their castles and their caves, and they make them with boxes, and we've got glue everywhere. I've turned my conservatory into an art and craft area for them. You've never seen a mess like it. But they come out and they've got these wonderful things that they play with. So one day we were out the garden playing Paper World, and Noah had his dinosaurs playing, and the wind blew one of his dinosaurs into the water feature. So we held it up and went, "Oh, Soggysaurus." Well, he thought it was hysterical. So I thought, oh, hang on a minute now. There could be a story there. So I listened to him playing, because he verbalizes, both the boys do. They're very verbal when they play, you know. And I was writing down little things that he was saying. By the end of the day, when it's time for him to go home, I more or less had a story. Tweaked it here and there, and this is it. Soggy Saurus.
I like Soggy Saurus.
And I've actually put his name on it as an author as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think that's lovely. Yeah.
The other one, Teddy,
Yeah.
wanted to do a book as well.
Oh, yes.
So we've got a thing where that we tell jokes, and we do mess around quite a lot in my house. And one of the things that Teddy does is tease me with different words, So I was telling them about a pig. A baby pig is a piglet, a baby owl is an owlet, a baby frog is a froglet. And I said, what's a baby duck? And he said, a ducklet. So all ducks now, a ducky ducklet. So I said, what do you want your story to be about? Ducky ducklet.
Ducky ducklet.
He is also named as an author on there. So they are both happy now. And we went to their school, and the children in their class did the end pages for us with all their lovely little drawings.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's super. Yeah.
So
I must admit, I do agree with you, because obviously I've published young writers, and the first one I ever did was my one of my granddaughters.
Yeah.
And she wrote My Family, which was a take on witches. Oh, what was it? So her mom was the book witch.
Right.
Her auntie was the Wicked Witch of the West. Her uncle was Dracula's brother.
Oh, crikey.
Her cousins were mummies, zombie mummies. So they were punk zombie mummies. Punk zombies, that was it. One was a mummy, one was a punk zombie. Her sister was a ghost because a tractor fell on her. And I was the tooth fairy, and Grandad, my husband, he was the wizard. And she wrote this story. I sent it off to Winchester, Winchester University every year, writing competition. And I sent it off just out to see what happened. And she got a commendation.
Oh, that's lovely.
And she was 13, I think she's 12, 13 at the time. And I published it, and it's called My Family. It's a brilliant book.
Has she kept that up? Does she keep writing now?
She now does something. She's more creative in the sense that she loves baking. So she makes cakes and cupcakes.
Yeah.
But she's very artistic. I've got some images of her where she wanted to paint a bedroom wall. And she takes after her mother and her auntie, because they used to do the same.
Yeah.
She did this a head with flowing hair, and it was absolutely and she did it blind. She just drew it and then painted it. Absolutely fantastic. And I love children who come up with creative things. And of course, last year I published Jolly Loves Jelly by she's 11 now, 11-year-old.
That's right. Yeah, I saw that.
Which is all about a giraffe who likes jelly. So, and I love working with children. I think it's brilliant. So another area of your stories that I like, which I must admit is similar to mine, and we've already sort of covered it, is the educational element of them, and the fact that there's this underlying and subtle message in each story aimed at letting children know the right side of life.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this wasn't an accident. It certainly, from what you've said, was intentional, wasn't it?
Yes. Sometimes it's nice to be direct with children and say, you should do this, you should do that. Other times it's more appropriate to be a little bit more subtle. And books are just so wonderful at putting over a message in a funny way, or, an exciting way, a fairy tale way, but they deliver a message, and they can deliver a message. And that's how I started writing for school, actually, because when I'd want to do a lesson on something in particular, like being good friends or sharing. If I couldn't find a book in the library, after 2 hours of searching, I'd give up. And I'd quickly write my own story, you know. I didn't have pictures to go with it, but that's okay because I'm quite animated, so the kids would laugh at everything I did anyway. And I used puppetry and things like that. And so, yeah, there are messages in them. I think it's important that children know how to behave, when they can behave different ways in different situations, because when they don't understand that, it can get some of them in a lot of trouble, you know, when they don't know how to behave appropriately in different settings. So if you can pop that into a story for them, they are learning it almost by osmosis, you know. So
yeah. My husband, because my daughters are down in Australia, and I go down there and stay for 2 or 3 months. And he comes down and then he comes back home. And this particular time, he was on about this story called The Runaway Mug. And I said to him, and he started writing it.
Yeah.
And he used to tell his girls this story. And he says, but I don't know how it ends. And I said, why not? He says, because they always fell asleep before I finished it. So I said to him, right, I want you to, while I'm away in Australia, you've got 2 months to finish that story. And he did finish it. And actually, I did put it in print for him. And I keep saying to him, I'm gonna publish this.
Yeah.
And now, although it's in print, it's not being officially published.
Yes, yeah.
So, and then he keeps saying to me, oh, I can't deal with the fame. It won't, you know. And I said, shitty face, I'm going to.
That's funny.
He's Welsh as well, so what do you expect?
The kids, when they were little, I started this journey really. I mean, Mother Earth was my first proper book, but I had originally done these. Right, that's Noah and Bampy in the camper van.
Yeah.
And Theodore Henry's Busy Week. And they were originally smaller books than that. And I just rushed them through a few years ago as Christmas presents for the boys. So they had a book about themselves, you know, for Christmas. And I had some extra ones done so that I could give them to Granny Nanny, that's my mother, and aunties and uncles and what have you. Anyway, they all liked them and they said, oh, why don't you produce them? So I did. I went back over them and redid the illustrations. My illustrations are not the best, but they suit some of the stories I write. If it's funny, my illustrations are quite funny. So if it's funny, it will work. If it's a little bit more serious, it wouldn't work. But yeah, so they had their books there, you know, and they often tell me stories, making things up, you know, and I keep thinking, oh, I can't keep pinching their ideas. I got enough to do already. I got so many things on the go. It's unbelievable.
I think kids.
Sometimes I wish my head would just stop.
Yeah, kids are wonderful. They come up with some brilliant ideas and brilliant stories, and I think when I wrote Little Friends, what I did was I was watching children and listening to him, and every story has this underlying message, and it's the same with The Runaway Mug. The underlying message is that look after what you've got, because one will regret losing it, and that's so. It's a lovely story. So I'm definitely going to have to publish it. Now, Claire, as I said earlier, you've written all these books so far, and I believe there's a couple more in the pipeline. So would you like to talk about them and perhaps tell our listeners so they can learn more about these new books?
Lovely. I've got one called The Fantastical Tale of Gareth Bale. And as Welsh people, we're all very, very proud of Gareth Bale, who captained our Welsh team in the World Cup. Fantastic player, so skillful. I mean, he's very often been called the best player in the world, you know, during his time. Sadly, he's retired now, just as I'm bringing a book out about him. That's not very considerate, is it?
It isn't, no.
But I just wanted to celebrate somebody who meant so much to everybody in Wales. And I've written it as a modern day myth. So Gareth wakes, when he's a baby, he's born, and his shrill cry wakes up a wizard who's been asleep for hundreds of years. And to thank Gareth for waking him up, he conjures up a dragon, and they fly to Gareth's house and land in the garden, begging the mother's pardon. And they proceed to breathe fire into his belly to make him want to compete. And the wizard casts a spell to give him magical feet. And the rest, as they say, is history.
That sounds fun, does that? That sounds brilliant.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Simon's doing the illustrations for that, so it should be ready anytime now. Although Simon is a little bit slow. Come on, Simon.
So, what's your other book?
Right, this one. It's a bit sad, this one, because I'd lined up this fantastic illustrator. And earlier I was saying how artists are not necessarily good illustrators. It's a different skill set. And it was absolutely wonderful. I was so thrilled to have found him, And when the things started to come in, he had the same problem. There was no continuity. Each picture on its own was a work of art, but there was no continuity. But anyway, so I'm stuck now. I've got to find another illustrator for that one. The story is called Just Be You, a real fairy tale. And it's about a little boy, a prince, who wants to be a princess. And so he sends out his valet. When it's the annual ball, he decides that's the day he's going to do it. So he sends out his valet to go and fetch him his special attire. And he comes back, and it's a dress, a beautiful dress, like nobody's ever seen before. And at first, all the people, all the guests are a little bit shocked and put out. And then a duke from another land comes and says, could I ask perchance, would you like this dance? And they see how happy the prince is as a princess, and decide that it doesn't really matter what you wear, and you can be whoever you want to be. And at the end, they say, he bids them all good night. And in case there's any sort of doubt about how they feel about him, they all say, and a good night to you, princess. Oh, I love it. And that's, I've written that for two wonderful little boys that I know that like to wear dresses. They like dressing up as princesses, and honestly, they're wonderful children.
With this, I think I'm with you. I think the problem is that children have always liked to dress up in different costumes, and it's nothing to do with sexuality at all. This is children playing at dressing up in different characters.
Yeah.
We did it. Our brothers and sisters did it. This is how it's always been. It's only adults who are stumped in this box.
Yes, absolutely.
White, of grey areas. I always say that children everything's black and white to children. It's right and wrong, left and right, black and white. That's it. They don't see all the grey areas that we as adults see.
Now, what I noticed with that was that one of the children was in my class, and his mother was wonderful. She said, if he wants to put a princess dress on. But the other children were wonderful with him, because they'd say, Miss, why does he like pink? And I'd say, well, pink is a colour. So, it's the same as any other colour. Yeah. And we go through all things like that, It was great, actually, because it gave the other children something to lock on to realise that, well, you can be different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And nobody ever took his princess dress. We had all dresses in the role play area. Nobody touched this boy's dress. It was his favourite, and it belonged to him. And he used to put his jumper on his head so that it hung down like hair down his back. So we got him some wigs, and then he used to steal my blue tack and make fingernails out of them. So we got him some false nails, you know, to play with. But honestly, nobody took any real notice of him until he got into the juniors. And then it started, and you saw that he started all those lovely little kind, generous, wonderful little things about him. You know, his more feminine side, he calmed it all down.
Got compressed. And yet we've all gone to the pantomime, and what do we have dressed up? I mean, I played when I was a teenager, in the local chapel, I played Prince Charming.
Yeah.
Because women played Prince Charming.
They did, yeah.
And the men played Widow Twankey. Or
the Ugly Sisters.
Ugly Sisters. Because that's the way it's always been.
Mm.
But it's just, I think in today's modern society, they're thinking too many greys, and you shouldn't. You should remember there's more to this box than meets the eye, and you should look beyond it. And just because the only thing I object to in today's society is this, if this is the way they feel, they must need to transgender change. No, they don't. They need to explore it.
Yeah, they need to wait.
Whether it really is them. Not you ramming it down the throat that they must change their name to feminine name. They must, therefore, you've got to, no, let them explore it. Let them talk about it. Let them understand it.
Yeah.
But don't pressure them into accepting it, because you will push them into doing something they don't want to do, and they may well regret later in life. If they, I mean, I've got a daughter a granddaughter who's ACDC. That means she can't make her mind up, as I say. I've always laughed with her.
Good band, though.
You can't make your mind up, can you? And she says, no. and I've got a stepdaughter who is married to a beautiful girl. They have two fabulous children. They are by IVF, by the same father, so they've had one each. Fabulous kids. And it's one of the most happiest marriages there is. I've got friends who are living in Spain, two Polish guys who are absolutely happy. They call me mom. They both call me mom, even though I'm not. And they come and they ask for my advice and everything. We get on really well. No problem. You know, and I'm very open-minded. But I just think, stop pushing it down children's throats.
Yeah, there's enough time.
Understand it, but also educate other children to understand it as well. So I am absolutely in agreement with you. But we could rant on this box forevermore. So I better not. So another area of your writing career is that you do school presentations, which you touched on earlier. So, but this in particular, I know, supports the new Welsh curriculum in its aim to ensure pupils become ethical, informed citizens who are ready to be citizens of Wales and, of course, the world. So can you share something about that work? You know, can you tell us how rewarding it is and exactly what it entails, please?
It is the best part about being a children's author. When I retired, I took voluntary redundancy, and saves one of the young teachers. They had a lot on their plate, you know, with children, young family, paying mortgages, and mine are sort of all gone. So I decided that I would go then, and my husband was retiring as well. And then after a few years of being out and about in the camper van and touring Europe and touring Ireland and Scotland, I started to really miss the children, and not so much my colleagues, the children. And so I decided that it would be a good idea to go into schools and read my book to them, Mother Earth is Weeping, because I know that that's a very current affair, the earth and all the problems that we're experiencing. And as you said, the Welsh government I'd made that a focal point of children's education in Wales. So we started going into the schools and I was in my element. I couldn't believe it. I've got fibromyalgia, but when I go into the school, I just fire on all cylinders. It just fills me with so much joy that I can't keep still. And I am full on for the whole day with all the children. But when we get home, I can't get out of the car. Very funny. But I just love being with them. I find children fascinating. They're wonderful to be around. They're just joyous, beautiful creatures, children.
They are. I agree with you. I love working with children. I love having conversations with them. It's brilliant.
They do come out with some wonderful things. Fair play to them. The last one we went to as well, one of the children, he was absolutely thrilled because I had 2 hearing aids and he had 2 hearing aids. And I had a mic, you know, around so that he could hear on the loop. And he was absolutely thrilled to bits.
That's superb. That's great. So one of the questions I always ask my writer interviewees is, if you were starting to write now, what is perhaps one piece of advice you would have liked someone to have given you before you started out writing? It could be the simplest of suggestions, but one which you think could have helped you and which might help other new writers who are listening to this.
It's nothing to do with writing, funnily enough. It's to do with marketing and selling. Because I know nothing about either of those. And I am constantly like feeling my way. But it's very difficult to teach this old dog new tricks. So every time I figure out a way to do something on the computer, by the next day, I can't understand the instructions I wrote down for myself, and I have to start all over again. And it's like Groundhog Day every day when I'm trying to market or publicize these books. So I think that people need to realize writing the book is actually the easy part. Yeah. Selling the book, it is very different. Yes. I've been lucky. I've had great sales, particularly for Mother Earth is Weeping. I've been very lucky. But it's frustrating because I know that the books I've written, I know that children love them because I go into schools all the time with them, you know, and read different ones to them, and they absolutely love them. And those children that have seen me in school, they can't wait to buy the books. So now I'm left with this feeling, well, I'm underachieving really, because these books would sell very, very well if I knew how to sell them.
So I'm going to put a plug in here then, because you should be looking at listening to my podcast and finding the ones that relate to marketing and selling. Because I do have some, honestly. And yes, you should be talking more to me about things like that.
Yes.
Don't worry, we all have had the same problem. Listen, I live with a man who was top salesman for a number of companies and understands marketing better than anyone. And I said to him, I need you to help me. And he says, oh, I've retired. He says, I can't sell books. I said, it's a commodity, the same as any other commodity. You know,
yeah.
No. So I actually have to suss it out myself as well. So don't worry. We're all in the same boat, which is why I researched it as much as I can. So there you go. And he'll swear at me when he hears this. Now, before I finish our interview, I want to ask a couple of questions, but these are more personal. And I do this with everybody, so you're all right. Mm-hmm. First, I want to go back to when you were a little girl. And I know you're going to say, well, that's a long time ago. It is for me as well. And I want to ask you, what is it you wanted to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be, when I was very little, I wanted to be a teacher. And I used to line all my dolls up. And, you know, I always play in school with my dolls. But then when I got to be a teenager, I wanted to be an engineer because my dad was an engineer. and I always thought it sounded fascinating, you know.
Mm.
So, and he used to teach me a bit of trigonometry and things, you know. And then I got on a course in the local college. It was only a short course, really. It was a matter of months. And I didn't get an engineering job afterwards, but I got a husband.
I like it. I must admit, a lady once said, I want to be an astronaut. I thought, what? And that was an author. She wanted to be, I couldn't believe it. So there you go. So finally, can I ask, what does the future hold for Claire Donald, busy picture book author and school visitor?
World domination. I don't know. And I sometimes I think that's a good thing not to know. No, I really don't know what it holds for me. I think I don't want to be famous at all. I do want my books to be in every school, in primary school in this country. And boy, if we could get it into America, then I would be famous. Actually, my grandchildren think I am famous because I've gone to their school and read their books and sold books at their school, and everybody talks about me in their school. But they think I'm Julia Donaldson,
Well,
not Claire Donald.
There you go. There you go. If you're famous in your grandchildren's eyes, I think that's the best claim you can be. So thank you, Claire. I have to say how much I've enjoyed talking with you, even with our little glitch with the Wi-Fi. You can never get away from the Wi-Fi.
Well, funnily enough, Anne, I have enjoyed it myself.
Now, I hope the listeners have discovered something interesting about you, and they've learnt more about your writing and, of course, your delightful storybooks. So I want to thank you. I thank you all for listening today. Details of Claire's books can be found on our website, which is funnyonionstories.com. They're also available from Amazon and hopefully from all good bookshops. In the meantime, if you need help with any aspect of your writing journey, check out our website, mentoringwriters.co.uk, and we will endeavour to assist you. Once again, I want to thank the lovely Claire Donald for being here today in conversation with me, Anne Brady, at Mentoring Writers. Thank you.
My pleasure, Anne. Thank you.
You're welcome.